Good afternoon. I think we are live. I should just check my screens here. Zoom TV. Yep. Okay, a very, very good afternoon to all those viewers who have actually signed up, had a look, wanted to ask some questions. My name is Dharmindher Singh. I'm one of the migration agents down here in the CANNINGVALE branch. Today, we are going to be talking about IT occupations, what they are, and how they feature into specifically in certain subclasses. Primarily, we're going to talk about how they perhaps, in most cases, the questions will surround whether they are on the 190 list, or the 491, or the 189. So today is everything to do with IT occupations. And once again, there's going to be a lot of questions, I'm sure, as usual, there is, or what's on this list, when is the invitation round going to happen? We're not going to talk about that yet. But if you behave, if you ask the nice questions, and if you listen very carefully, we might touch upon that. But essentially, we really want to talk about how the current occupations that are there, that has not been updated yet, the new list of this and that hasn't happened. I'm still looking at the same list, literally is right in front of me here. So without further ado, hold your questions. You can post them as I can see them. I'll read them as I see them come up. But as soon as I finish with this, very quickly, I can take some questions, and then we should be more comfortable with this particular approach. So without further ado, once again, sorry for the delay. We're just sort of working out some technical stuff. So here we go. Let's talk about, in some alphabetical order at least, how, say, for example, we have to understand that if you have, for example, studied at least a degree, and if it's an overseas degree, and if you happen to be here studying something else, and then you realize, I want to know if my occupation is on the list, and how do I get some permanent residency pathway? So the general rule of the thumb is, what we try to encourage a lot of the students to say is that if you've studied overseas and if it's accredited and it's recognized and all those wonderful things, you need to have at least 2 years of experience in that nominated role, not just randomly, right? Closely related, we'll talk about that as well, and what is it and what is not, before you can then try to go, and we will get ACS to do, Australian Computer Society, to do your skills assessment. And if they say, yep, you're all good, then we have the all-important thing, which is the skills assessment for us to launch the expression of interest. EOI is what we call. And then depending on where you are, if you're an overseas offshore candidate, or you're an interstate, or better still, if you're already residing here, you've done, say, MBA, or you've done another course, but you have an overseas qualification and you have 2 years of experience, then we can start talking about 491, 190, and 189 and how it impacts you. Now, if you've studied here, as in Australia, surely if you don't know already, or if you are in the midst of finishing your studies, once you finish your studies, you can apply for the skills assessment, provided you either have the additional 1 year called professional year, which you have to complete, upon which you either have that, and you get 5 points for that, by the way, or you complete 1 year of work experience if you choose not to go down the path of professional year. Because if you're that good, lucky perhaps, and fortunate in all those wonderful things, you can get 1 year of work experience in the related occupation, get the skills assessment, and then we apply accordingly. Now, there's no two ways about it. ACS really requires that. Australian Computer Society requires that, and depending on the occupation that you choose, and that's just how we go about it. I'm sure previously when I've done or spoken about this in a couple of years ago, and even recently, some of you might be overseas, some of you might be sitting somewhere else, and then think to yourself, but I've only got a diploma, how does that relate to? No problems. Depending on how long or how far away, ago that you have done your diploma, and if you have maybe 4, 5, 6 years of experience, depending on your circumstances, then there's a little matrix, chart that we can just follow within the ACS that says, right, if you've done this, you can still get a skills assessment done correspondingly in that occupation based on your years of experience. So a diploma doesn't mean it's the end of the world. So if you are in that situation, you have such a thing that you want to clarify, feel free, email me, call me. Email me, you have my details. I'm happy to tell you what you can do to get the all-important skills assessment. Now, let's talk about some of the occupations that you have. Now, I can go into all kind of occupations. A lot of you says, but hang on, I understand that developer programmer, say for example, is on the list. I'm like, yeah, it is. It's in fact on a very high demand list at the same time. And I get questions by people who say, well, I want to do an assessment as a developer programmer. I've done a bachelor's in IT. I'm like, okay, fine, fantastic. So what ACS needs to see, not me, ACS essentially wants to see, have you at least got 50, 60% of the unique components in that field of study that you say you have? Now, if you do, only then you can seemingly go down the path of getting an assessment. But if you've only done one unit, stretched it to maybe 2 units, you might encounter a problem to get an assessment as a developer programmer, for instance. Perhaps they could say, right, or we'll make it something else or whatever that you've studied that perhaps complements those units that you've done. So be careful about going down the path of saying, I've actually want to just get a developer programmer, for example. Now, some of you might have completed or about to complete a master's in IT, and it's very generic, that they touch upon various aspects of certain things. And then you realize, oops, I've only done one Python unit or one programming unit or whatever that might be. So clearly you're going to struggle. However, the safer option for those people in that situation is what we end up advising them is to get a skills assessment as an ICT project manager. Now, you would have done one brilliant project in your final year or something like that, and a couple of units that are project related, which usually is the case. So don't feel that it's the end of the world for you in that regard, but because there is an option for you in that manner. And then good enough, you get an ICT project manager, you get a skills assessment, you apply, and then off you go. Now, what if a lot of you go a step further and you say, well, I want to try to get an assessment in something that can at least also get me a 189, which is a skill independent visa, not just the 190 and the 491. So you must be careful then, because if you've applied with ACS as let's say IC project manager, and then you want to go and ask for another assessment, you kind of can if you can demonstrate that. So that's your profile is obviously with the assessing body already. So don't feel that you cannot. All right. So just don't worry about those kind of stuff. So at least come, sit, speak to one of us, okay, and just say, hey, this is my scenario. How best can I get an assessment? Let us decide for you. And I think that's a sort of a simple way to go about it. I just want to see, obviously, some of the questions are really like Dimple and I think maybe Ashish are already asking specific questions. I'll come back to that. Good questions. They're very, very good questions, Dimple and Ashish. I will definitely come back to that. I want to tell you a little bit more about, so let's talk about the history of this list. If you guys, collectively guys, if you've all been listening to some of the news that was reported 2-3 months ago, the minister as well for the immigration talked a lot about how certain occupations are going to be in demand and certain not, certain tier 1, tier 2, and all this mumbo jumbo interesting language that they use. What does it really translate to you guys? IT occupations are safe. I can say that live, okay, it's safe, but they might, we don't know, they might put certain requirements that you need to have maybe some experience. At the moment, if you are invited for 190 and 491 in WA, and if you're a Western Australian graduate, apparently you don't need any job offer letter upon invitation. Now, obviously, if you're an overseas candidate, or if you are from interstate, which they encourage, by the way, if you're invited for 190, you will then need a job offer letter for 6 months. That is the current ruling now. The update hasn't happened yet, in case, Dimple, you're wondering. The update has not been announced. They've just said, okay, this, that, the other, but nothing official has happened. Or they've gone back to what previously meaning a year or two ago, where they say when you're invited, whether you're a Western Australian graduate, you needed a job offer letter for 1 year and all of that. I suspect some changes might happen. We don't know what it is. This particular time that we have together, doing this live, broadcast, is not to speculate about that. So let's just sit back, talk about what situation you are in. Are you closer towards finishing your studies? Do you already have a skills assessment in hand? Have you applied an EOI? Are you just watching? And let's talk about that now for a second. The new financial year clearly has begun. I have had some clients who were in fact approved last May, invited, all done, dusted, but they didn't get the invitation because the state nomination told us we don't have a quota. We're like, oh, really? Seriously? Never mind. So as of this week, they were all approved. So they got the link. So apparently it's kick-started again. Things are happening. They're going to invite. Things are going to go brilliant within probably a week and a half or two. So we can anticipate that. What the quota is this year, how many for 190, 491, no one knows. All right. And I'm not about to speculate that just now. However, we can position ourselves. So if you have got some life left in your existing visa, whether you are on a 485, you are eligible for your extension, you are on your COVID visa, you're on whatever visa, if you're in the IT occupation, you are generally safe. So, okay, we got people asking me, HR advisor, I don't know why. Well, we'll talk about positive pitch later. So some of the occupations, just want to run off very quickly. Analyst programmer. We've got computer network systems engineer. Love that occupation. Developer programmer is still there. Let's pull up this information here. Of course, we've got ICT business analysts, ICT managers, NEC, not elsewhere classified. ICT project manager, ICT security specialist, which is kind of good for people who say done, masters or bachelors in cybersecurity, for example. And cybersecurity initially was on the list specifically for cybersecurity. So right now they've just lumped it together and call it ICT security specialist. So you can't save if that is your cup of tea. ICT support engineer, ICT support technicians, NEC, ICT systems test engineer, software and applications programmers, software engineer, software tester, systems administrator, pretty much the bulk of sort of IT occupations. Now, I'd like to ask at this point in time a cyber question, like show of hands, all these occupations that I just rattled off, has anyone got any one of those occupations? Are they remotely having any of those occupations? Sion, maybe, or I don't know. He's asking me engineering professional. Don't know why that's the case there. I'm talking about IT down here. So I just rattled about close to 10 occupations. Who can maybe just put a message down there and says, well, I've got this occupation, and I just want to have an idea before I continue. Just have an idea. Just what sort of IT occupations I'm looking at some of the questions here at the same time. I just got developer programmer there. I've got telecommunications network planner. What else? Oh, okay. Aussizz is a developer programmer. That's cool. I'm just trying to think. Who else? So we got only two? No way. This is IT we're talking about. Surely there'll be people excited about talking about IT and wanting some information. So far, no. Okay. Maybe there's some passive listeners. I don't know. Perhaps they're there. So So if you who's working, who has done professional year already? Anyone who's about to finish professional year? Who is still confused? Who is still confused that should they change occupation altogether? Should they go and do another course altogether, be a HR advisor, or go and be oh, okay. Saurabh, cool. Saurabh is a computer network systems engineer, cool. Aussizz has finished his, I like their correspondence, and I think that's what I'm actually welcoming here, that you post a message first and you're listening to what I'm trying to say, and you're actually interacting with me, which makes my time worthwhile, and you're going to benefit from this free, sort of a presentation at the same time. So let's concentrate on Aussizz right now, because he's got my attention. Okay, so let's start with your first question, Aussizz. Let's take some quick questions. Hi there, I'm applying from overseas with 105 points. Whoa, bale, 105 points. You got 15 points from WA, right? That's why. So you're a developer programmer. I checked the last invite, but never mentioned overseas. Does this mean overseas we are not invited? Okay, let's take that first question, right? So like I just confirmed to you, there was no invitation round in June. Nothing happened in July. We are in August 17 right now. Fingers crossed, we should have a round. Fingers crossed. So what they've just done, they have given the link to my clients or some of your other friends or whatever they might be. So basically that's how I know. So who were approved in last May, invited probably in April, but approved in May and all good, but they couldn't give the link. The link just happened this week, okay? Which could, like I said, Aussizz, it could mean a couple of things. Overseas applicants are still encouraged to apply. Interstate applicants are still encouraged to apply. So you are in a good position. Your 105 points, very sound for 491. Now you know that you've opted for 491, which is not a bad option though, because you don't need a job offer for that. That's really makes it a little bit more easy in your case, Aussizz, because you're overseas. You probably don't have your network down here to go and get a job offer, which if you are invited 28 days to try to get a job offer, it's a big ask. So hang in there, Aussizz. If you're a developer programmer, let me go and look at your other question just with you. And you have finished your ACS professional year. I'm presuming you've gotten all the points and everything else. Then you're in a good spot, okay, Aussizz? You hang in there. You should be getting an invite, provided it happens in August. Now, if it doesn't happen in August, tough, right? Then it is historically, I've noticed whenever the state nomination does anything, a lot of noise, a lot of what's going to happen, this and that, the other, and suddenly the announcements from previous years, I've noticed that usually kicks in September, October, and boy, do they invite. They invite left, right, center. So fingers crossed. Last financial year, we had a quota of about 8,000 or so. We have asked about 10,000 this financial year. Fingers crossed, palm together, or whatever that you want to pray, that we actually get a little bit more, and then maybe we can, bring all of you guys, excited people down here. And they are all not 10,000 for IT, by the way. Okay, so just wanted to mention that. Let's take a second question in order. So Dimple, haven't forgotten you. I suppose I've already mentioned that. Has WA announced the criteria or just the overview? You're right. So it was just the overview announced. So the criteria and all that hasn't really kicked in. Although the overview, if you read between the lines, it's a bit of a teaser as to what is coming your way, right? So it's a good overview as far as I'm concerned. Positive Beach, hi, any updates for HR advisor? So I don't know, it hasn't been updated. Not particularly talking about HR advisor though, sorry. But happy to take that conversation differently. Okay, so Sukhvinder, telecommunications network planner, 85 points for 189. What are the chances of the invite? Precisely, right? 189, it's a little bit different in terms of how the state nomination works. Previously, they will invite you quarterly, and then sometime last year, they started because they needed more people. They started inviting people monthly for a few months, and everybody got excited. And then suddenly they stopped. So your points, if it's 85 points, raw points on itself, brilliant. I think if you can improve your points by doing, the usual NATI or the PTE, or if your partner or has got English or skills assessment or work experience, all those wonderful things, if you can add to that masala, so to speak, and if you can get that, brilliant, then you are in a better position to definitely get an invitation for 189. Okay, so that sort of answers your question. So Kupinder, okay, Shyam Alvi. Sounds like an Israeli name, Alvi. I got a friend of mine who's that one. He's a combat engineer. Shyam says, hi sir, is engineering professional occupation getting invitation? So if you already have that, I think on your, let's just see, on the 189 days, on a yeah, I mean, you're clearly on the on the 190 and the state nomination list. But as to when the invitation round happens, I don't know. So you wait. At the moment, you're on the list, Siam. So I hope that sort of keeps you a little bit more engaged. Okay. Ashish, I've already answered yours. Saurabh, computer network systems engineer with 75 points, including state for WA. I better ask you, Saurabh, are you from WA? Because if you are, that's a pretty popular occupation. A lot of my clients have gotten invitation on computer network systems engineer. 75 points for, did you say, you never specify 190 or 491. You will get an invitation for state nomination. So here's the deal. Because we don't know when the invitation round is going to be, and assuming it happens this month, and what if you don't get your 190, you get a 491, and you be like, that means I'm quite good. I can get an invitation for 491. What happens is you're in the early stage of this invitation rounds game. If your visa is not about to end anytime soon, and if you've got a lot of oxygen left in your tank, I would sincerely suggest you can ride the wave 1 or 2 rounds to see based on the projected invitation numbers and the quota that they're going to have, and see what criteria that somebody was saying that at the same time, which they haven't really put out there in terms of actual policies. So I would sort of play with that, because they are not going to let you, once you've invited for 491 and accepted that in that financial year, you cannot be invited again for 190. So be careful of that. But if you're like some of my clients, they're not fussy. Like, hey, you know what? Give it to me. 491, bring it on. No one needs to know you're on a 491. Your friends, if they ask you, the usual thing, hey, get a visa lag, or whatever they will ask you, right? Yeah, it's all good. They don't need to know you're on a 491. You need to know, your parents or your loved ones or whoever, I need to know perhaps, that this is the visa you're on. There's nothing wrong with the 491, by the way. If you're on a 491, they've removed this thing that you need to work in that nominated occupation or anything like that. In fact, it never was there. They've removed this thing that you need to make a certain amount of money for every 3 years. As long as you've got a tax returns for 3 consecutive years, you're eligible for 191. What is the big deal down here? So read between the lines. Yes, everybody wants to go and get a 189 so they can tell someone at a party, oi, I got a 189. Who cares? I mean, if you're not that sort of person, then policies can change quickly. So if you get a 491, if you have an EOI in place, if you are invited, take it. Don't, oh no, this could be up to you. I mean, if you have 95 points, surely on your own, then if you add 15, that's a lot of points. Then you said, no, I only want a 190. Then good luck. Then stick to the 190 if your visa is not going to expire. That's what my advice is, right? Okay, so that's my email address and my number, my mobile. You can leave me, you can drop me an email clearly, or conversely, that's my mobile number. I prefer either one of them. And if your question so far hasn't been answered, although there's still a lot of questions, I'm going to go into them. Feel free, if you don't want to maybe post this question, and if you want to ask me separately, I I will try to get to most questions now. I get a lot of emails every day. Um, I'm very happy. In fact, if you are in WA, and if you're in Perth, I should say, and if you have a query pertaining to that, right now I'm telling you, make an appointment, call me, come down and see me here for half an hour, no charge. Excuse me, no charge. So make an appointment, see me, let's work out exactly what your options are, what your pathway is. Let's have that half an hour discussion with you. I'm happy doing that. I'm saying this live. If you're listening to this, obviously you've got to be here in Perth, right? And if you're not, if you're overseas, I don't know, we can work something out. You can call me and we can sort something out, all right? So let's move on. Shriyansi Dixit. Okay, hi, I'm doing advanced diploma in IT for 2 years. How do I apply for PR? Okay, cool. So, Shriyansi, right? I say that name right. It's a pretty cool name. I think what I would do is you just want to know specifically, what areas that you actually worked in, or sorry, studied in, and then we can correspondingly, look at this list here and see which one actually is applicable to you. Obviously, when you finish your studies, you will go on your TR, and then we can get the skills assessment done, and then you can apply based on what the strength of some of the stuff that you studied. Okay, Chirag, I've applied for 75 plus 5 ICT support engineer in New South Wales, 190 onshore, with 2 years of experience. What are the chances? You put 1, 2, 3, 4 question mark. They're good. Your experience is going to get you there. However, New South Wales usually historically get a larger quota than us, and they are very competitive. They like to invite people on 85, 90 and above. So it doesn't say how long have you applied this for, right? So if you've been in the queue for some time, pray that you get that, Chirag. Okay, Vishal, what's the chances for 190 Victoria for ICT security specialist with 90 points? A lot of people from the eastern states, the good part of last year, had a mass exodus in WA because they suddenly realized that it was easier. So I got a lot of clients who were like yourself, who were like, shall I wait? Shall I not? What are the requirements? Of course, in Victoria, you got to do the ROI at the same time. I think your chances are very good. I seriously think your chances are very good. So if you're not in a position to come down here, which I strongly suggest if you do, you might actually get a chance at WA at the same time, because 190 in WA, you need a job offer, remember that. But if you're where you are because you've clearly studied and you've done everything over there, Vishal, then I suggest this, stick around there for the next 1-2 months if your visa is not about to expire. So see how how it plays itself out. Okay, so that's what I would do. All right, Geeta. Okay, Geeta has got a long paragraph here. I have a positive skill assessment for program administrator. Okay, and IELTS proficiency score. Cool. Offshore candidate from India, currently working in project management field in Honeywell. Cool. Got a lot of friends working there. I've submitted EOIs for both 190, 491. What are the chances for my role for 190? Ooh, how do I find a job in Australia? Well, if you're working for Honeywell, tell Honeywell, get you down here. I mean, they've got sister companies, parent companies down here, number one. Number two, not a recruitment agency down here to tell you how to go about it, but if your project or whatever you're working is sound, you could get a job down here and you could come down. That's another conversation altogether. That's for employer-sponsored visa and what have you. But if you claim all those things that you said you have, Geeta, then I think your chances are good enough for 491, to be honest with you, in WA. So depending on how sound and how good your expression of interest was actually done, they are inviting. Having said that, it can only become a little bit more better, Geeta, and for everybody else. It's based on the quota. Because obviously they're going to favor naturally people who are graduates from WA. So that's historically always been the case in most of the states at the same time. So every time you see any of the states, they will always say, oh, if you're a graduate entry path, or if you've lived there for some time. So and if you're working in that related occupation, and if you're certain parts of Adelaide, they have different requirements. So if you're overseas and if you've got that and everything, like you said, you have sit tight, okay, because there's no point you coming down here because you can't right now. So Pinder says, I've done advanced diploma. Okay. Doing an advanced diploma, by the way, doesn't get you any more points, because a diploma is a diploma, you're only going to get 10 points. However, an advanced diploma just gives you an edge in terms of the pecking order for getting invitations. Because how it works is obviously PhD, master's, and then degree, and then if you've done, obviously somebody who's say apply, for example, just if it's case in point, is somebody who's done an MBA and then realized, oops, MBA is not on the list, but ended up doing a trade course, and you also did a trade course, but you're only getting 10 points. But this person has done a master's, but he's got a trade qualifications at the same time in assessment. They're going to get master's point 15, and master's is going to be a step higher than bachelor's. So in terms of pecking order, they're going to get invited earlier than you, even though you got more points. So just be careful of that, all right? That's just how it works. Vishal's come back. I think anything for engineering technologies? Well, at the moment, if any one of y'all are going to be posting questions about asking me if there's anything for this, anything for that, I unfortunately, I have to, my disclaimer is I have to base it back on, what was happening in a fast and furious way in May, in April. Wow, there was a lot of things going on. So suddenly, if I were to tell you, yeah, engineering technologies for 90 points is khatarnak, balle, you're going to get it. It's a bit scary, isn't it? So wait, see how the occupation, well, it is on the list, clearly is on the list. I love this, Yeah, clearly is, man. Yeah, so, but you need to understand, to people like yourself need to understand, it's, what are we talking about here? Clearly on a 491 only, not on a 190, and only if you are a graduate from Western Australia would an engineering technologies be invited. And if you got 90 points, and Vishal, if you're from here, then it's fantastic. Ashish, thank you. Even though I have no control over the invites, I'm quite nervous / excited. Been looking at the skill select data API. Yeah, that's how it is, man, Ashish. It's a kind of a brutal world, though. I mean, you've done the right thing. You've studied, you've got your PY, you've worked, you've get your NATI, NOTI, NITI, whatever that people keep saying, all these funny acronyms. And then you've done your PTE at the same time, and you're like, what will it take? You are sitting on 85, 90, 95 100 points here. Banda pagal ho janda. You can go mad thinking, what would it take? How much more skill do you need? And then in between, no disrespect to the trade occupations, a chef with 65 points gets invited for 189. I know how you feel. I understand that. That's just how the nature of the business is. So karma. If you've done good thing in your past life, something is going to happen to you. So just relax. Now, Chirag, let's go to Chirag. Good questions, by the way. I really enjoy this interaction. I think that's what I want to do. I've been doing this now close to 15 years. I like to share some of my expertise, some of my knowledge. And I mean, I've been in Perth, everything to do with Perth, house, state nomination, all that. I think fairly comfortable with information I've given you. So come back to Chirag's question. Chirag, I've applied, excuse me, for 75 plus 85. Same questions. I think I've answered your question, Chirag. Okay, so Chirag again. Chirag's got a lot of questions at the same time. Dude, what's going on? You've hijacked all the questions. Okay, and you've applied, I've answered that. Or if I want to go for 189, which occupation do you suggest? Well, if you've can go for 189. If you're not a support engineer, you've got to get another skills assessment, isn't it, Chirag? Then if you can get that, and if you're on 189, then good luck to you on that. Jamyang Sonam. What are the chances of granting PR for 190 with 70 points with account courses? So I assume you're talking about accounting graduates. I've had accounting graduate clients who, the finance managers, management accountant, general accountants, 70 points, but they were invited a while ago. So I'm not going to say anything about accounting students. At the moment, they're under the microscope. So let's just hope that they're on the list of some kind. Things are happening. Things are okay. I'm not speculating. So just want to say that. Now, you're still on the WA list at the moment. So let's just hope that everything else is there. Every single person that I know, not just necessarily clients or students, among ourselves, among my peers, my colleagues, we are wondering, oh yeah, what is going to happen with this invitation rounds and the list? Okay, so just hang in there, okay? Okay, the subsequent question is the mandatory requirement of employment or experience still exempted for WA? Yeah, so the requirement for work experience, you don't have the work experience requirement here because there is no mention of that. But if you're not from WA and if you're an overseas person, if you're invited for 190, the previous policy as in the requirements for 190 requires you, when you're invited within 28 days, to provide a job offer letter for 6 months. Now, that's a big thing if you're not here. But yeah, so that requirement at the moment for overseas person and interstate applicants is still requirement, okay? So Abdullah, how are you? Okay, ICT systems analyst, 75. I like how all of y'all have come straight to the point. ICT systems analyst, 75 plus 5, which is good. Working in the field, salary, Vale, you got more money. That's not bad. Salary 110K. What are my chances for Victoria? Your points, not the best, I must admit, but at least you're getting paid. Waiting, which is not a bad idea at the same time. So I'll wait. For all of you guys who just said, oh, what are my chances here? I'm this. Wait, yeah, just wait, because the financial year is just kicked in. Announcements are going to be made left, right, center. Quotas are going to be announced left, right, center. So there's no point me telling you right now, oh, I think you should do this and that. Just wait. You're going to watch it within 2 weeks to the next 2 months. Everything is going to change, okay? So I hope that explains that. Rigzin, currently doing MIT Advanced in Queensland. I already have 1.5 years experience, MIT, 2018, 10 plus years experience. Cool, offshore. How do I go about PR and complete my current study? Well, if you're doing all of that and you've got 1.5 years of MIT experience, 10 plus years of work experience. So what I'm not sure here is, Rigzin, okay. So why don't you just tell me what kind of skills assessment you have, Rigzin? So if you have that, plus your work experience, you might be getting some points. And if you can work out some kind of skills assessment, depending on, which area that you're talking about, whether you're on Canberra, you want to, or Queensland, or whatever that you think is applicable. And if it's so good, you could come down here as well when the new list is announced and the quota is announced, then your case becomes a little bit better. So go back to Abdullah again. He's asked me the same question. I posted the message twice. Don't know why you keep posting the message twice, but I think I've answered the question. Let's go to Praveen. Siva Kumar. I think he might be from Malaysia or maybe south of India. If you are, more power to you. I'm an IT graduate and graduated from a university in UK. I'm from Sri Lanka, so I should have read that. I'm from Sri Lanka. Okay, what are my options? So Praveen, you're overseas. You your IT grad. That's all good. So your options really, I think what Praveen we need to talk about is if you've got 2 years of requisite experience, and if you can get a skills assessment for you, then what we're going to do is we're going to do a skills assessment, and with that we need to determine which field is appropriate for you, where you are, how you're going to incentivize your chances of being in a better position to maximize your invitation, and we can talk about that. Now, somehow someone has decided to ask me a question. Jam Yang, sneaky little question. Any information about COVID-19 visa extension for 485 visa holders? Firstly, there's no specific things like that, okay? COVID visa, if you are a holder of one, and at the moment, literally just did one yesterday, if you want 90 days from your existing COVID visa to be expiring, you are eligible to apply for an extension, apparently. So we just launched one, no questions, no problems. They're still granting it, and in some cases granting it for 2 years. Unbelievable. And if you're eligible, you might not even have to pay the department fees at the same time, right? So they'll work it out in some shape or form. So that's all good. So in case you're wondering that, but it's not, you're not saying that because you're a 485 holder, but if you are a 485 holder, if I understand your question correctly, and if you don't find ways in which you can either be eligible for your 485 extension, then what you need to do is obviously try to apply for this COVID visa because it's there right now. So you should capitalize on that. Ashish is back again. Cool. Is there any state accepting overseas IT workers? Yeah, for WA, like WA, I believe so. I believe South Australia. I believe one other two states. Ashish, drop me an email. I'll confirm that to you, and at least you're certain about that. I don't have the information offhand now. Jamyang is back. Appreciate some of the questions that we have so far. Jamyang says, hi, if I have done skills assessment from another agent, can I change it before I proceed further? Yeah, you can do whatever you want to do. I mean, you've chosen that agent to do a skills assessment for you. If you've gotten the result and you don't want to stick to the agent, it's up to you. You can go and choose whichever agent that you want. No problems whatsoever. It's just the least of your concern because that particular task of doing the skills assessment has been done. So you are engaging somebody else to do another part of your work. So yeah, Jamyang, you can do that. If you're still not sure, let me know. Okay, Ashish is having a personal relationship with me. He's asking me questions. Okay, are there any visa options for overseas candidate to help me be in a WA candidate? What do you mean? Are there any visa options for an overseas candidate to help me be a WA? No, well, if you're not a WA candidate, if you're overseas, if I understand the question correctly, you are applying your EOI for WA specifically as an overseas candidate. So I don't quite understand, is there any visa options for an overseas candidate? Yeah, so overseas candidate 190 and 491 for you, if that's your question. Can I come to the end of the questions, unless there's a few more that's in between? I'm happy to sort of give you a few minutes to come through. So, excuse me. So while waiting for this, I could just simply say, in a roundabout way, sort of a summary, if you want to call it, IT occupations are popular. And if you're there, you're worried, not just your question, you look at the rest of the other people's questions, they're all about, I've done this, I got this number of points, I got this much of experience, I want 75 plus 5, I got this, I got that. You're good. IT is in demand. It's just a question of where you need to be, which state best to be in a position to actually capitalize on a yet to be announced quota for all the states, teaser of a criteria given to a majority of people. So just watch, see how this can actually translate for you. Now, without further ado, I might just maybe wrap up on that and perhaps say, oh, Ashish got another question. Can I? No. Okay. So final question maybe from Ashish. I'll just take that because it's 3:59, 1 minute short of 4 o'clock. Can I come to WA on a temporary visa? Yeah, you can, so that I can improve my chances. Yep, you can. Now, that's an interesting one, isn't it? So what visa would you come in on? Visitor visa? Good luck in trying to get a visitor visa if you get it. Or if you need to know how to go about it, there's ways that you can demonstrate that. But at the moment, just sit tight. Just sit tight. And if you came in here, you're a visitor. So how are you going to? There's things that happens when you're invited. The state nomination team wants to know at the moment, if they use the same policy, that in the last 3 months prior to you being invited, you got to demonstrate that you were actually here physically. You got to show proof of, not just bank statements, because they don't rely on that anymore. They look at lease agreements. They look at your flight records. They look at your whole host of things. If you're working, where are you working, and a lot of other things to demonstrate that you're physically here before the invitation. So that's a tricky bit to try to meet the requirements down here. Okay, so Jatinder, how to find an employer sponsored for WA location? Kind of understanding your question here. How to find an employer? You're welcome, Ashish. How to find an employer sponsored for WA location? Back in the days, you used to use the Yellow Pages. Just joking. Nobody uses Yellow Pages anymore. If you don't know what Yellow Pages is, Google that. You're going to have a bit of a laugh. So now you have the Google. Exactly. You find out what and where do you want to be, what's your occupation, who, potentially could be, hiring, go to Seek, go to whichever career, sites, and find an employer for whatever occupation that you're talking about, Jatinder. I hope that answers your question. I'm going to leave it at that. If a question pops out, I'll take that offline. That's my cue. I hope that this has been beneficial to most of you at this time. So if you still have any other questions, more than happy, email me. You've got my contact there. I'm very happy. And I'll also say once again, I'm happy to take, if you're from Perth, you can come down, sit down right across me. We can sit down for half an hour, no charge. We can have through any questions that you have, any pathway. And if you're overseas, or if you're somewhere else, or whatever the case is, if you still wanted to have that, we can do an online sort of thing. We can arrange that. So I'm putting it out there. So bring it on if you want to. I'll leave it at that. That's my cue. Janvi, if you see this thumbs up, let me see if it's frozen down here. The screen is still on. This is fun. I think I'm good, Janvi. This is where I'm probably